Welcome to Car Coach Reports. We are constantly talking about the auto industry because this is what we do every single day. And we report on not just national news, online, radio, everything. And we've actually are in an unusual situation in my entire life with the auto industry potentially going to implode. And there's a lot of reasons that happened. But where are we now? What can we do about it? Well, there actually is something we can do about it. So, Paul, you've been a part of the industry for what, like 20 years now?
Since I could drive.
Yeah, well, before you could drive, actually. But that's a whole different story. So
we've seen a lot of stuff going on with Jaguar, Stellantis, Volkswagen, Nissan, Ford. Everybody's having...
General Motors, too.
General Motors have been huge issues. Everybody's having problems. And...
in Europe, too.
And we've been talking about it a lot on the channel. Lauren's been covering it. I've been producing it. And we've been talking about this so much, we thought, let's just sit down, have a proper conversation about are we looking at the end of the automotive industry and what can they do to save themselves from implosion?
And that's sad. I mean, and some people are like, oh, who cares? I'll just go buy a Tesla. See, this is where you're wrong. There are jobs, and not just jobs when you think of like, oh, people that work at the corporate offices, manufacturing plants all around the country. Some are union, some are not. But then on top of that, you've got the local dealer and all the companies that support that local dealer, whether it be the local accountant, to the dry cleaner, to the event location, to the marketing. I mean, everybody does everything. And a lot of local dealers are really big on helping communities with charity, especially the one here in Buffalo. West Her is huge. Help put together theaters and kids' baseball games. I mean, they help everything because they want to be a part of the community. So saying that you don't want them at all, I think is a huge mistake.
Yeah, absolutely. Although there is something to be said about whether or not we still need dealerships.
They're businesses. They're local businesses.
Right. Not on a business level, but on a regulatory level.
Mm-hmm. Well,
because
it was franchise law.
It was originally built as a franchise law to protect the consumer.
Right.
But there's a lot of dealers the bad dealers, and we've covered this on the channel as well. There's a lot of dealers that take advantage of that restriction and say, well, if you're not going to buy from us, who are you going to buy for? You can't buy from the manufacturer.
Buy online.
Yeah, you can't buy online, not like Tesla.
Right.
They somehow
or Lucid.
They've somehow skirted the rules and gotten away with it. Lucid's lower production, though, so that might be okay.
Right. They have cool cars, though.
But the dealership network is starting to become this relic where people are thinking, I don't really want to deal with this.
Well, you can buy a car online. We've covered that as well. If you want to purchase a vehicle, you don't even have to talk to the dealer. You could do it all online through email. Yeah. You could also hire someone to do it for you. There's tons of companies out there that will actually go through the process. They'll ask you what you want, what's your price point, and they'll put the deal together for you. And there's a fee for it, or you can do it yourself, which is probably the smartest choice.
True. Yeah. And these dealerships are the first line of contact to a lot of these manufacturers, and keeping them alive and healthy is one of the main things that's going to keep the manufacturers alive and healthy.
Yep.
Because the people aren't buying cars that the manufacturers are building for most of the manufacturers, actually.
Well, every manufacturer's got a lot of inventory. We covered that also on the channel.
Yep.
And one of the interesting things is, first we had tons of cars, everything was fine. COVID hits, we have a chip shortage because that was their buyers. They didn't know what was going to happen. They thought no one's going to buy cars. Everybody bought cars. People wanted to escape. I had a lot of friends in New York City that called me, including one of them was a weatherman for one of the national stations, called me and said, I need a car like today. And I'm like, today? Like, nobody buys a car with that kind of like short notice, but he needed to escape. And I get it. Everyone had their own reasons. Everyone had their own path. But then all the prices went up. High demand. Then the supply dropped. Yep. Prices went crazy. I sold cars during that time, used cars. Man, it was a great time to sell a car.
Yeah, I sold a car too, and I made out pretty well.
But then they caught up on the chips. Took a while. Mm-hmm. And now they've got tons of inventory, but they also have mandates from the federal government, which I think is the biggest mistake, saying you have to buy, put it this way, all black Ford Tauruses that are electric. Could you, what if I don't want that? I want an SUV. I want a truck. You can't buy that. It's got to be a black Taurus that's electric. I mean, it's that kind of off base.
Yeah. It's hyper specific, and we just covered this on a bunch of recent episodes. Actually, we've been talking about this for years now.
Oh, I've taken a ton of heat. If you knew how much heat I took from every single manufacturer that have said, we're not going to invite you to a program. We don't want to talk to you because I wasn't all in and drinking the Kool-Aid. But whatever your stand is on electric vehicles, stand your ground. Whatever that is. And I stood my ground.
Well, you were talking about the
mandates are foolish.
The falsehoods, the marketing lingo that had convinced so many people. The Kool-Aid, they were drinking the Kool-Aid that
some people are guzzling the Kool-Aid. Yes,
that back when the Prius launched 20 years ago,
when nobody wanted, we used to laugh at the Prius.
Yeah, well, I mean,
now everybody wants one.
I think everybody still kind of laughs at the Prius.
Well, you know what? The new Prius is great, and it's won a ton of
very
awards.
Pretty.
And Toyota is one of the few brands, if we get to brands,
yeah,
that got it right. They got it 100% right.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Toyoda, which is not Toyota, like we say, it's Toyoda.
Yeah.
In Japan, the CEO said, listen, we're not doing this. He was smart. He knew it. He read the tea leaves, and he said, that's kind of a fun pun.
Yeah,
but he read the market correctly by saying, we're going to offer a mixture. You can buy a Prius.
Mm-hmm.
If you want a plug-in, we have a Prius Prime. You want an all EV? They made the BZ4X. Honestly, not a great car. Short range, weird looking.
And that's part of the problem that we're talking about
but
here.
But they did it because they had to, because otherwise they're going to be fined by the EPA.
And that's exactly the issue. So let's actually reverse just a little bit and cover the mandate in case anybody hasn't heard about what's going on.
That's going to go away, thank
It's
God.
not an actual mandate. There's not somebody sitting in a chair saying, I'm going to make you buy EVs. It's not that bad.
Feels like it.
It feels like it. But what's actually happening is that there are rules that have been set by the California Air Resource Board,
called CARB, which I find funny. CARB is in carburetor.
It's a little ironic.
I know, isn't it? Every time I say CARB, I just kind of chuckle
you know they have someone that they probably pay to sit down and come up with an acronym.
Well, our dog's name is Holly, after the carburetor, not after Christmas.
Well, to be fair, we did actually sit down and think about that one.
Yeah.
That was like,
but that's why I say every time I think of it, I think of my dog.
Yeah, of course. So they've put these rules into place that essentially say that you have to abide by certain levels of emissions. You have to hit certain MPG targets.
ZEV's mandate.
There's
zero emissions standards is called ZEV, or the California waiver.
And it goes even deeper than just that. There's actually a lot of little bits and bobs
corporate
to
average
it.
fuel economy.
Yeah, and so
which was 34, and nobody made that number except for Honda, because they don't sell trucks other than the one truck. And it's not really a truck.
And they get fined if they don't hit certain certain targets.
Huge.
And so that's why you'll see like Dodge, right? Mm-hmm. And they'll build this 1,000 horsepower Demon 170.
Yep.
Awesome. And then they'll have.
They did build it.
And then somewhere else in Stellantis, they're building an all electric. They're building a hybrid.
And Fiat 500Es that don't sell.
Yeah, and the Tonale and the new Darts.
Yeah.
Right, Darts.
Yeah.
No,
Hornets.
Thank you.
They've had Dart before
they had
too.
the Dart. That was also an economy
ago.
car, but that also helped them with the credits because it was a lower emissions, higher MPG.
That's a whole other story with Stellantis. But what's interesting is,
but the point is that
they were making these mandates, and then they said you had to buy carbon credits. What the hell's a carbon credit? Well, they're $20,000 a piece.
Yeah.
So if I needed to buy carbon credits, where would I buy carbon credits?
Tesla.
So this is interesting.
Tesla, Rivian, Lucid.
Well, here's the deal. Tesla has so many because he made the deal early under the Obama administration. He gets 7 carbon credits for every car he sells. He sells a lot of cars. So now he's got 7. Now Ford comes in and says, hey, we got this Ford Mach-E, and I'll never call it a Mustang, ever.
Nope, it's not a Mustang.
It's not a Mustang. A Mustang is a sports car. That's not a sports car. It's an SUV that's electric. You can put all the horses you want on it.
There's probably also people sitting at Ford being like, I don't really want to call it a Mustang.
Well, I was called out in the board of directors meeting. I was told by an internal who I shall remain nameless. He says, you were called out. They specifically mentioned that you wouldn't be happy. I said, they're right. But the fact is they only get 4 carbon credits. So why does Ford only get 4 and Tesla gets 7, and in some cases manufacturers only get 2?
Well, and then we also know about how
that doesn't make any sense.
California was manipulating the numbers.
Yes.
And they were saying if you have whatever your MPG is, if you're an all-electric vehicle, you get to multiply that number by some ridiculous
it's like
multiplier.
637. It's ridiculous.
Some weird,
number.
strange,
And
arbitrary number.
We found that in a law that nobody reads
Mhm.
because all these politicians pass these laws. They don't read them. You could ask them to go, I don't know. They don't even know what the chicken tax is. If you don't know what that is,
We need to do an entirely separate story
Yes.
on the chicken tax.
It's a lot.
I'm sure that
mandates.
all the other podcasts have probably covered this at some point. It's such a weird, crazy.
But it's old
odd
laws that are in place that got it passed and they've never been removed.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, this carbon credit issue is part of a big problem. And this all comes back to the California Air Resources Board because they make the rules. Now, initially, back when there was smog in LA, and I know everyone's like, oh my God, you didn't see the smog. I knew about the smog. I'd seen the smog. We almost moved to LA when I was a kid. And I understand that needed to be handled. But over a period of time, they got very powerful. And then they had lost their oomph. And under the Obama administration, since he was there for 8 years, he gave them more and more and more power and said, you call the laws. But that's unconstitutional, actually.
Mm-hmm.
For one state, for California to say, you know what, New York, follow us or you're in trouble. Ohio, Kentucky, Alabama, all the other 49.
Yeah, essentially,
it doesn't make sense.
One state is writing the laws for
the other
49 states under punishment of the feds.
Right, and if you read the Federalist Papers, which is going to get really deep in the weeds, you can go look it up. It's also in the Constitution. One state does not have more power than the other 49.
Yep.
That's the bottom line. That's the nutshell of it. So in that case, what do you do? So what's the impact first? Let's get to the impact. Then we'll save the solution, so you want to stay for that.
So the impact is there are now hundreds of thousands of cars sitting in lots not being sold.
Everywhere, even in California.
Because they're meeting these requirements. Mostly EV, a lot of hybrid, also keeping in mind that costs are going up and up every year. Every couple of years, there's a new regulation that comes. Actually, every year there's new safety regulations that come in.
Kill switches.
You probably have noticed that all new cars come with backup cameras. Very nice feature. Mandated in 2018.
They want forward collision warning. That's coming in 26. That's going to be in every car.
Plus things like crumple zones now have to be X distance and all sorts of stuff. That's why cars are getting bigger and bigger. There's more sensors on them. There's more crumple zones. There's more airbags.
Processors.
And a lot of this stuff is saving lives. Don't get me wrong. But a lot of this stuff is not reducing accidents. So we're actually even looking at statistics that there's increasing accidents but lower thresholds of actual injuries and death. Mm-hmm. So there's this weird payoff where all these things are being mandated because, well, the regulators believe, based on studies paid by probably whoever benefits the most by whoever did the study.
Follow the money. Always follow the money.
To put all these things in place. And so now the costs are going up, and so, oh, well, consumers really want electric cars. They're so convenient.
The media says.
Well, there's a lot of moving pieces here, and we've been trying to decipher it.
But I always tell the truth. You'll notice, go all the way back to way back to over 10 years ago.
10, 20 years ago. We've been talking about this forever.
The truth.
Yeah.
And I have no problem telling the truth. And yes, I've taken heat for it, like I said, from every brand, and I don't care. Because the truth is, consumers make the final decision. If you want to buy one, buy one. You want to buy a hybrid, you should get one. You want a plug-in, go for it.
And that's
if you want diesel, you should have that option as well. I still have my diesel SUV.
I still have my diesel SUV. We have matching cars.
Yes. Different years, but same vehicle.
But that's the proof of what we're talking about, is that now they're making EVs because they're looking at whatever statistics that they think, or whatever the storyline is.
How much money did you want to pay me? We can skew that story.
So they've convinced themselves that electric vehicles are the future and that there's no other possible solutions to, regardless of what
where the battery minerals come from, who owns all the mines.
Yeah,
regardless of those batteries when they're done.
Yeah, regardless of your stance on how bad the climate truly is and what the cause of it is, you could think that it's not even happening at all. Okay, well, at least care that there are slave children in the middle of nowhere mining cobalt.
South America.
And that's what's getting into your batteries.
Right. It's even the Ukraine now, too.
Yeah, and it's not just cobalt. There's a lot of other materials, and there's a lot of other situations going on.
Afghanistan.
But it's really horrible, and this stuff kills the people that mine it.
You get cobalt lung.
Yeah.
It's bad. And who owns all those mines again?
China.
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 If I follow the money, and you can very easily.
And China's the biggest developer of electric batteries.
Right, but you know what? They also make non-electric cars. And where do they sell the most of them? Not just in China, where they sell tons of gasoline-powered cars. Not hybrids, regular gas-powered cars, regular normal vehicles.
Europe.
Russia.
Oh, sure.
So Lada, which is kind of a car, If you've ever seen Top Gear.
I'm still surprised that they're around still.
Well, it's a Russian-built car. Listen, here's a way for all of your people to get cars because it takes so long to get one. We'll bring them in. And now the number one seller of cars in Russia is Chinese cars.
Of course.
And there's multiple brands, and they're gasoline-powered.
Also, keeping in mind...
battery doesn't make sense in Russia. You think it's cold here in Buffalo.
Yeah, true. Also, China is now owning a huge portion of the automotive industry. They're investing in a lot of companies with their battery technology and their computer technology, and there are some vehicles that are just Chinese vehicles that have slapped a different body kit on it and sold under a different brand name.
And they get funding by the Chinese government. That's how they're making such headway. So what they're doing is the Chinese have entered the European marketplace, and this is what would happen here in the U.S. And so while you got great product like Volkswagen and BMW and Mercedes and Porsche and all these great German brands, including ones that don't come here, they got a problem. So now they come into the marketplace and they go, all right, your car is $60,000. We're going to come with a Chinese car at $40,000. Yep. Now the consumer goes, that's a great looking car. Mm-hmm. It's got great technology. Mm-hmm. And it's either electric or it's a hybrid or it's even diesel, because they do sell diesel still there. Yep. Or petrol.
It just went out of fashion here in the U.S. because of
VW,
because VW screwed up.
I'm going to bet it's coming back. That's a whole other story.
We have a theory, and that's a different topic.
We will address that in future segments, so make sure to subscribe and like this video. Okay, so the interesting thing is they came into the market at $40,000. So how can China make these cars at $40,000? Because the Chinese government is subsidizing it. Yep. Because really, those are $60,000 cars.
Even if they're using cheaper materials, it
doesn't make a difference.
It doesn't matter because
China
the end
subsidizes the difference from the government. So you are ABC Chinese car company, whatever brand. Yeah. There's a bunch of them. BYD, Chery, SAIC. There's a whole bunch of them.
Yeah,
they have more than we do. They've got like 128 brands last I looked at. Some come, some go, and the cars that they don't sell sit and sell.
Well, they're going through their automotive renaissance like we did back in the 60s.
But they're making it because they knew they couldn't beat us at the game of cars.
So they're forcing it.
So they put out the story of electric cars, but before they put the story out, and we've covered this on the channel, they bought all the mines, and then they said electric cars are the way to go. So interesting. Yeah. So now you're subsidizing this. So maybe you don't care. Maybe you're going, I'll buy a Chinese car. I'll save $20,000. That's great. The quality isn't as good. Let's be honest.
Sure. Well, okay.
I've driven a lot of them, and I've reviewed them on the Car Smarts channel.
Yes. Let's compare.
Okay.
So Genesis comes to market.
The Koreans.
You want to buy a Lexus, you want to buy an Audi, but you don't want to pay the tag of these legacy brands.
Of $100,000 plus.
Right. Buy a Genesis. Save $20,000, $40,000.
Depends on the vehicle.
Get a comparable vehicle.
Designed by the Germans. Engineered by the Germans.
But the thing is that essentially you're seeing people come and undercut the established brands saying, the landscape is changing. We're going to adapt. Mm-hmm. Price point is a huge piece of the puzzle. Mm-hmm. More now, I think, right now, because there's so much fluctuation in the economy. We've had recessions and whatnot. Mm-hmm. People need cheap cars. And yet cars are only getting more expensive and loaded with more shit. And then let's throw on EVs to the pile. Mm-hmm. EVs, hybrids, and PHEVs, all of them are much more expensive.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's so much that goes into them. And there's the only way to combat that is subsidies from the government, which is what these credits are for.
Right. And that's what they're trying to do.
And that's how companies
like the $7,500 tax credit.
And that's how companies, it fluctuates
credit.
as well.
It's not a check. It's not lowering the price. That means if you owe $10,000 in taxes and you purchase a car and you don't make too much money, but you make enough money that you qualify, because if you make too much money, you don't qualify under the new regulation, then what you can get is instead of paying your $10,000 in federal tax, not state, federal, you would only pay $2,500, which is okay if you owe $10,000 in federal taxes. That's a lot. You better be making some good money. Mm-hmm. All right. So if you owe $5,000 in federal taxes and you have the $7,500 tax credit, you only get the $5,000. The rest of that money goes away.
And it fluctuates based on where your vehicle was built.
Right.
And when you bought it, because certain years, if you just bought it today, like the regulations could have changed and you won't get as much of a tax credit.
Or if you lease it, but you don't buy it. Because if you lease, you get the tax credit like on Honda. They're using a General Motors product for their Prologue.
Yeah.
They're using the Blazer EV chassis, so they would get it on a lease. They wouldn't get it on a buy.
Right. But also, so all these companies that are building these EVs, they're still getting the benefit of those dollars.
Right.
You are getting the tax credit. It's subsidized so that you buy from them. But then also they're getting.
But what if you owe no taxes? Then you get nothing.
Right. But when they buy EV or when they make EVs and they sell them, they're also getting credits from the government.
Right.
And that's how Tesla was able to get so big. They ran on a. I think
He's smart.
Are they still dollar negative? Are they still in the red?
Nobody makes money on electric cars.
Well, that's true. But I'm saying as a company as a whole, I think that they finally made a profit. But I think a huge part of that is because
selling
of
the carbon credits.
The carbon credits. That's literally kept the company alive.
Oh, yeah, from day one. Because at one point, he was making over a $30,000 loss on every car. So he's producing cars. A lot of them don't get sold. If you look at the Cybertruck, for example, and there was just some numbers that came out before we did this, they made like 33,000 Cybertrucks. Yep. But they didn't sell 33,000. They have like 12,000 just sitting there that people didn't want. So that tells you they overbuilt. Why did they overbuild? Carbon credits. So what's interesting is we'll go to the brands now. You're looking at Stellantis. When they were bailed out multiple times, when they were bailed out the last time, Fiat Chrysler, which at the time was FCA, was an Italian car company. They ended up getting the company from the U.S. And then they said, we can't make any money. We brought Fiats in, we brought Alfa Romeos in, we brought Maseratis in, great cars, fun cars, but they weren't selling because the price point was high, insurance was higher.
Yeah.
So
a lot of it was the reliability was low,
right?
Which definitely affected it. There's also people that remember
they had performance brands, which are all
people
gone.
from your generation. We'll say like, okay. We'll say that car was unreliable. People from my generation will say, hey, I remember the old sports car.
Yeah.
That's probably all the context that there
what those
is.
Brands are known for.
And so people say like, oh, look, a funny looking car with a triangle grille. Like, I think it looks cool. And they drive that and then they drive a comparable car and they say, well, it's missing something because
smaller screens, but it has a lot of the Uconnect.
Well, they had just built the brands and they were trying to come into their own. They only get so much funding. It's not like when Tata bought Jaguar and said, here's a blank check, build whatever you want, make it as nice as you can.
That's another conversation,
right? And we'll get to that in a moment. Yeah. But you were talking about Stellantis, and the biggest story with Stellantis right now is Carlos Tavares.
Well, wait a minute. They got rid of all of their premium brands.
They got rid of all their premium brands.
Before their CEO quit on a Sunday late in the day.
Before he destroyed the brand.
He said, no more Hemis, no more Hellcats, no more Demons, no more big engines, no more V8s, no more Abarth for Fiat, no more Quadrifoglio for Alfa Romeo. Yep. I mean, what are you doing?
What
are you doing? You're taking away the things that actually sell. They want the TRX truck.
Yeah, even the legendary Chrysler brand, one of the original brands.
Minivans.
Well, it was only one minivan until the other.
The Voyager now.
Didn't even hear. Honestly, with all
like a stripped down.
With all the stuff that we hear about in the industry, how close we are, I missed the launch of the Voyager somehow.
No,
you mentioned that to me yesterday, and I go. What? What do you mean they make a second minivan?
It's just a stripped down.
It's the same thing.
Pacifica.
Yeah. So he's come in and destroyed the brand, and everybody inside
brands, Jeep, Dodge, Ram. I mean, what are you doing?
And everybody said it was an unpopular move, which is becoming a trend throughout the entire industry.
Right.
Unpopular
with consumers and unpopular with employees.
Many of our contacts who will continue to be unnamed.
Yeah. We have to protect our people.
Yeah, and they're saying, there's a lot of pushback. It's not just from the public because the media is pushing it, and you don't always see the reaction. It always comes down to the dollars and cents.
Sure.
You're watching the companies slowly collapse, and you're saying, I wonder what could have possibly happened. Well, maybe we destroyed the identity of the brand that's been around for 100 years.
100 years for Chrysler. So one of the things that Tavares said, who was the CEO, he just stepped down, said, we are not going to buy carbon credits from Tesla. Well, how are you going to pay for that?
Yeah,
we're going to pay the fine. It's like, wow, you're already in a negative position.
When half of the Dodge vehicles have 700 horsepower.
Right, and they had a big fight with the union. They tried to push back, and they lost. And now they're saying, we're going to pull our Ram business to Mexico. That's going to be a legal issue because they already made an agreement with the UAW. So they're trying to empty some of their plants and move them to other countries, which won't work. I think that's going to end up being backtracked, but they're going to end up having to buy carbon credits from Tesla because they can't afford to.
They have to do it regardless.
So you can pay $20,000 per carbon credit
Mhm.
to Elon Musk, who's happy to take your money,
Of course.
richest man in the world, or you can pay the fine to the EPA. And it's cheaper to buy the carbon credits from Elon Musk, and he bases the price based on what the EPA is charging, just a little less. Smart move.
Yep.
I got to give the guy credit. I gave him a lot of heat in the past, but he's smart. He knew how to work the government. His car build quality is hideous. We've seen the paint quality. We've seen the build quality.
It's not just us. Everybody says it.
Everybody says it,
not,
even those that own it.
We're not taking pot shots.
No,
it's just the truth.
It is what it is. But you know what? If you want a utility and you want to go buy transportation, you can buy a toaster. That's just a toaster. Or you can buy a really cool toaster. It's just a toaster.
Fair enough.
It's just an appliance.
Yep.
So now we're looking at Stellantis. The CEO steps down and leaves them in the lurch.
Mhm.
That's bad.
Not only that, but now we have Tim Kuniska stepping in.
Yes.
And
He's the performance guy.
And we know that he has a proven track record of being
He's not the CEO. He's
No.
only the CEO of
No,
the
interim.
Ram line. That's it.
He's interim right now.
Right.
Which
Well,
is
he's back.
fine.
He's
He knows
bored.
what he's doing.
He's a good
Look,
guy. He was
we've
bored.
been to a lot of Stellantis launches. Every time we sit down with the Ram guys, the Jeep guys, and the Dodge guys, you can tell they understand. They love their product.
And they
They
understand their
appreciate
customers.
what it means to own one of those vehicles and the heritage and the performance and
what it means.
all of the other
The
things.
Dodge brothers.
connected
That's
to
where it
that.
came from.
Yeah.
They get rid of all that. What are you doing? You get rid of your whole heritage.
Yeah,
Where's your bread butter?
I've never seen people more passionate about their. I was at the Jeep Gladiator launch,
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
and I've never seen people more passionate about.
Go to Moab. You'll see
yeah,
tons.
it was
of
it
them.
was awesome. It was absolutely awesome.
People are very passionate about their brands. And that's how it used to be when I was a kid.
Yeah.
If you were a Ford person, you were a Ford person. But now there's so many brands. So what happened in the 90s, or actually we'll go back to the 80s, was something interesting. This situation has happened in the past. And
Yeah.
back in the 80s, when all this happened, the Japanese saw an opportunity. They've always wanted to sell Honda, Toyota, at the time Datsun here.
Yeah.
So they brought their brands in. They created dealerships, and people started buying their cars. They were teeny little econo boxes. But where are they today? Well, the number one manufacturer is Toyota.
Yep.
And Toyota makes great product on a global basis. And Honda also makes good product. Also built here. Both build vehicles here, and the number one U.S. built vehicle in the U.S. is Tesla. Number two is Honda. And I think Toyota has a few spots depending on which type of vehicle. But when you start looking...
Most of their trucks are built here.
Their trucks are built here. Their cars are built here. The Camrys built
Yeah.
here. But they've got a lot of factories, all three. Nissan builds also here. But Nissan's struggling. Because first off, their big mistake was changing their name from Datsun to Nissan. And you used to work at Nissan.
Well, they made up Datsun for the U.S., which
They
was
should have kept it.
they should have kept. I think
It had name
I
recognition.
think they heard something about Nissan when they were going to come into the market because so there's actually a history of the Japanese manufacturers, not just in automotive but in other areas, not understanding the American market back in that time
in the
period.
80s, yeah.
Back in the 80s and 90s, they truly did not understand it. If you're into video games at all, you can look back at the history of Final Fantasy and how they screwed that up. But
There's a lot of parallels.
But it makes sense how Datsun was the name that they chose because they were like, oh, it sounds foreign, but not too foreign. It kind of rolls off the tongue easy.
Honda
Versus
was too.
Nissan versus Nissan, or however
Yeah.
the Americans are going to say it, right? They don't want people to screw up their name because they care about the brand identity. It's not like Dodge.
Right.
Dodge is easy. Dodge, Ford.
when-
It's spelled how it sounds.
So the Japanese took advantage of this opportunity. They brought in Mazda.
Yeah.
I had an RX-7 way back in the day. Actually, I had a 280ZX at the time when it was just Datsun. And then, of course, you had Mitsubishi and a couple other brands that came. Some failed, like Suzuki. They still exist, by the way.
Mitsubishi is kind of failed, let's be honest.
It's got a partnership and an alliance with a Nissan. So what's interesting about the whole process is the Japanese saw an opportunity. They have built their cars since to be some of the best that's out there and some of the largest manufacturers because you have to survive in the U.S. marketplace to survive globally.
Yep.
Then in the 90s, we had this same type of failure happen again and into the early 2000s. And that's when the Koreans went, this is our opportunity. And they brought Hyundai and Kia here. And their sister companies, they're both half owned by the Korean government. And I have been to Korea and I've been to the factories and I've talked to a lot of executives there. And what I did find interesting is when they came here, their cars were okay. They were just like the Japanese cars. They're like,
They did get a lot
they
of
were
criticism though,
okay.
which is
Yeah,
what I was
they
talking
weren't
about with
great.
Alpha and Fiat. Is they carried on a negative connotation with their brand names for many years, and they're finally defeating it simply by
they've
just
defeated it.
making it good cars
And they build them here.
and giving amazing. I still have to. I don't know how they do a 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty.
That's
I
how
don't-
they beat the Japanese.
I don't know how they've somehow mathed out how to do that for the public, because I'm sure that there's some
Smart.
clever accounting going on. But
Yeah.
but that is the probably one of the major aspects that has helped them grow. But now you're looking back at the Japanese companies and you're watching them start to struggle. Some of them, and
Well, Nissan. Honda and Toyota are doing pretty
so
good.
Nissan's in a very precarious situation. We've covered this recently. It's a more complicated situation than other companies like Stellantis, where they're in a multi-company partnership with other companies, Honda, Renault, and
Honda only owns a little bit.
Mitsubishi.
But Renault and Mitsubishi
Well,
are the
well,
big ones.
so Honda
But
and
they screwed themselves on that.
True.
That was a Carlos Ghosn situation. I covered that he was the CEO. They wanted to get rid of him. Instead of saying, listen, dude, we don't like you. We don't like what you're doing. Whatever it may be.
it was all politics.
They said, let's arrest the guy and say he stole money. Now, we don't know if it's true or not. We may never know.
I don't think we'll ever know.
But
No,
the
that's-
best part of this story,
This is one of those stories that we'll talk about 50 years from now and be
this
like,
is the
my
best.
God, you won't
they
believe.
screwed themselves by making a public scene for the non-car industry,
Yeah.
by making it literally a movie. And they arrested
It
him,
could
and he
be.
escaped in a music case, and he's in Lebanon now, and they're trying to extradite him. It's never going to happen. In the
No.
meantime, when all this came down, and it was huge. It was huge. It was just a global embarrassment for the brand. And the Koreans are, the Koreans and the Japanese are all about proper etiquette, doing things correctly, not making yourself embarrassed, anything like
And
that.
each of them have like a philosophy that they run by. And like, so we've been to the headquarters for a lot of these companies, and you walk in and they have like these like rules on the walls of like
And
how.
you better follow them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember Nissan's, it was like, here's like the rules that the company lives by, and you have to like live them every day.
Right.
So anyway.
So let me get back to the story. So Carlos Ghosn is now arrested.
Yeah.
In the meantime, number 2 in charge is a gentleman named Jose Munez. Name may sound familiar, it might not.
Used to be in charge of just Nissan North America. and
Right.
Now
He got promoted.
now
He was in
global.
Japan at the time.
Mhm.
He got a phone call, and his story is posted. It's all over the internet if you want to find it.
Yeah.
He got a phone call to say, bring your personal items and come downstairs. Now, you get a phone call like that, you're in another country, like, okay.
Yeah.
So he got in a car, they put him on a plane and shipped him home. He's back in the U.S. Someone collected his personal items, and he got another job. And where did he end up? Hyundai. And Hyundai was smart. They captured a super smart guy. And he's not a car guy, but he's a very smart
Well,
marketer.
Hyundai and Kia are scooping up a lot of people that were
But at the time,
booted out from other
At
companies.
the time, they were struggling a little bit as a brand. They were getting more market traction, but they needed something to boost them to the next level. So in gaining Jose Munez on the team and letting him build the brand, he built Hyundai Corporation to a whole new level, added on a luxury line called Genesis. Now there's a performance line called Magma.
Magma.
And
So cool.
It is so cool. We got a chance to ride it. But really cool products coming. And Kia's also doing very well. And all of this comes down to who's in charge, who's making the decisions, not just from a marketing standpoint, but a product standpoint. And the results have been Hyundai's success, not just in Hyundai, Kia, but also Genesis, Magma as well, by hiring away a lot of the German designers. They hired a Porsche suspension guy that I got a chance to talk to. They've got just everyone, a guy from M Cars, Albert Bierman. So they've been hiring people away. Very, very smart. And so in the midst of all this, why Nissan wasn't a push to get rid of their CEO, they screwed themselves and only ended up helping Hyundai. Hyundai Corporation. Now Jose Munez has been promoted to the president of the corporation on a global basis. And above that is Jay Chang, who's a very smart guy. I've had conversations and dinner with him as well.
And so now Nissan's left in a lurch. They've lost 2 really powerful people that really know what they're doing,
That was a
because
while ago.
whoever was on their board or the other people that were in charge, they said, no, we know better, and we're going to operate the way that we want to. And so now Nissan is heavily invested in their projects, a lot of it being EV, making cars that people don't
The
want.
Aria and the Leaf. Listen, you worked at a Nissan dealer.
Yeah.
Did you ever sell a Leaf?
No, we had one sitting on the lot for the entire year that I was working there.
and they couldn't.
There was a charging port that someone with a GM electric, they had a Bolt, and they came up and charged at the Nissan dealership and went and got lunch in another car.
Oh, jeez. That's kind of sad.
I know. Anyway, so
that's the kind of stuff that happens when you build product that consumers don't want. Either you change that product or remove that product or build a better product. But I think part of their problem was the CVTs. Also,
they're not
the
evolving.
Transmissions people don't like. It's the same thing. There's
The
no
biggest
changes.
disappointment of Nissan,
He worked at the corporate.
I worked at corporate Nissan for a little bit. When they were launching the brand new Maxima, looks really good.
They don't make it anymore.
V6, 300 horsepower.
Fun.
And I get in the car and I'm like, why does it feel weird? Talk to one of the engineers. I was working in marketing. Talk to one of the engineers. They go, oh yeah, it's a CVT. And I went, why would you do that? Why would you put an automatic in it? Give me paddle shifters. This is a
6-speed.
They were billing it as a performance car, and that's exactly what it was not.
Right. And so that's part of the problem with Nissan is they have not stepped up to the game. Yes, they have a new Murano, a new Armada coming.
But they're killing off their brand identity cars.
Right. And that's a mistake. To bring in brands like Aria, which is okay, it's kind of cool. It's an electric car. Yeah. They're not selling a lot of them. Mm-hmm. So now let's move on from Nissan. We talked about Stellantis. Stellantis, we'll see what happens with the new CEO. They got to bring back their performance
We're holding
line.
our breath. But I thought I read something, this may have been rumor, that they said they wanted to bring back the V8. But we do know.
We'll see.
We do know that they're bringing back the V6. And we know that for sure because
but the car is not
if you go and check the new Charger, which I think is a very cute name because it's electric.
Yeah.
But
they also have a 6-cylinder.
Two things. One, it looks really good. It looks like it looks like someone took a 70s Challenger resto mod. Like that's kind of the vibe that I'm getting from it.
That's Giles, who is their
really cool
designer. But
they did as much as they could. But now they're offering, and you can see on the website they changed it a while ago.
They had to change.
That now they're going to offer a lower trim V6 hybrid.
I don't know if that's going to sell.
But also we don't know.
They buy it because of power. I see people all over the streets, even in the winter here in Buffalo, with Scat Packs and Hemis. People want the performance that they want when they want it. I think that's a problem. But we'll see what happens. I'll be monitoring it. We'll be reporting on all of these companies.
This is all still too early to talk about because
right now,
all we've seen is concepts.
And it's easy to talk stories.
So let's
see reality.
So let's pivot to Toyota. This is actually a success story.
Yes.
So Toyota was starting to go down the all-EV route. They were leaning heavily on their brands with Prime, which I think they've now gotten rid of.
No, they sold the Prius Prime.
PHEV, or
it's a plug-in.
They were saying that people were confused by the naming, so they're changing some of the naming. But honestly, that doesn't matter to the majority of people
Prius
watching.
Prime, they had the RAV4 Prime, and actually I had one, and someone stopped me at the BJ's parking lot going, oh my God, I want to buy one.
I've always had that. Look, it was the most normal cars, and someone stops you at a gas station or something, and they're like,
I know. Not the cool cars. Not when you're driving a McLaren or something.
No, we were driving the Maserati Cielo.
Cielo, yeah.
And I'm like, this is the coolest thing. I park somewhere and nobody gives it a second look. Nobody cares.
Unreal.
And then I pull up in something really normal, like a RAV4 or something. Oh my God, is that the new RAV4? And it's like, yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing.
You didn't see me going around in the new Mustang last week?
Yeah, I know. It's interesting. So let's pivot.
Okay, so Toyota.
Toyota says that, and Jack Hollis, who's the president of Toyota, said, Toyota North America said, nobody can meet the California waiver standards. And he's correct 100%. Yeah. And what that means is that you can't make this mandate of 100% electric. It's not possible. The grid's not there. Mm-hmm. Most of the country doesn't have electric charging. And the people that own the electric charging companies want to build in big cities where they think there's a lot of business. Mm-hmm. But like if you're in Manhattan, you still have to go to Brooklyn or Jersey. That doesn't work. Mm-hmm. Or you have to head north of the city. What are you supposed to do when you throw a cord down from your 10th story apartment and hope that no one trips over it? That's not going to happen.
There's actually some legality that rolls into that as well. Like there's a lot of stuff you can't do.
Right. It's illegal. They'll arrest you.
Top Gear is probably one of the best examples. Like, yes, I'm going to go charge my car in the middle of nowhere at like a restaurant. It's like, so how long is that going to take? A full day.
Yeah, forget that.
No.
The level 2 charger will take you forever. There's very few fast chargers, and it's expensive. And they took $8 billion of government money to come up with 7 charging stations.
Yeah.
That's not going to work either. That's your tax dollars, by the way.
Yep.
If you're in the U.S., it's money that you paid when you buy things or pay your bills. And so that's a problem.
So Toyota saw the writing on the wall.
They were smart and they stood their ground.
Yes.
So I give them a
And
lot of
and they
credit.
said, no, we're going to do plug-in hybrids. We're going to do hybrids.
We're going to build what people want.
Yeah, and because people, I think a lot of people out there, I think maybe us as well to a certain degree. We love our diesel vehicles, but I think if we were forced to buy a new vehicle, I think we'd be okay with a hybrid.
Not me.
I mean,
I'd lease a hybrid.
You deal with it, is what I'm saying.
Well,
like
the reason I would
it's not
lease-
like I wouldn't get an EV. You wouldn't get an EV. We wouldn't sit there and
There's
say,
nothing I
yes,
want.
this is practical. Yeah, exactly. There's nothing that we want. But a hybrid, I think we could make some exceptions. Like even a 48-volt mild
I would
hybrid.
lease a hybrid because when there's a problem, talk to any mechanic.
Yeah.
And I'm an ASE certified tech. I will tell you, 2 propulsions means potentially 2 issues,
Yep.
or the transition between the electric and gas. If it doesn't work right, you got a
Also
problem.
under warranty in a lot of these repair systems.
You
if
do
you
not want to pay. The
if
bill.
you need to repair your electric battery, they'll make you replace the entire thing.
yeah, or if you have an
And
accident, they do the same thing.
and there are great people online like Rich Rebuilds, who
He's
is
great.
very well known for repairing Teslas, and even got
Smart guy.
a couple of cease and desists, and
He's
he's
a smart
blocked
guy.
from ever using a charger from Tesla ever again.
I love it.
They don't want him touching their stuff. But he did some examination on these batteries and said, "Oh, I don't need to replace the battery. I need to replace this one failed cell," because he did a test on
They
it.
don't want you to do that. They want you to
Fix
change
the
thing.
whole battery for like $20
Yeah.
versus $10,000
that's-
for a new
that's the
battery,
whole
or
thing.
but it's maybe not that expensive, but it does get very expensive.
Right. No, they run between 6,000 and 12,000 depending upon what you're buying.
Yeah.
So let's take just a turn to another brand, Porsche.
Sure.
So they sold the Taycan because they had to, and they're doing the electric Macan.
And they partnered with
and-
Audi on that, which was
Right,
actually
well,
probably
it's under
helped them
the
a
same
lot.
window. Volkswagen Group is Volkswagen, Audi, Porsche, Lamborghini. What am I missing?
Bentley.
Bentley, Seat, Skoda, and Volkswagen brand, and then they also own Ducati and a bunch of things. But when you're talking about a Porsche, and it is Porsche, by the way, not Porsche. When you're talking about a Porsche and you sell a Taycan, I know I have a thing with that.
I know, I do too.
A friend of mine has one, and he purchased a Taycan. It was like $200,000, and you know what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
And he went from one location to another about 2 hours away, needed a charge. He went to a hockey game, and he tried to charge at the dealer, and the dealer had left their car charged because they wanted it charged for the next day.
Mhm.
So he said, well, I'll just go to a local charger. And every charger he went to either didn't work or someone was there. And we finally found a bunch of them. It took him 6 stops on the way back. It took him 4 hours to do a 2-hour drive. He was very perturbed,
Yep.
putting it nicely. Went to the dealer and said, you know what, I'm done with this car. I want to buy a Panamera.
Mhm.
They said, we don't want the car. He goes, what do you mean? We'll sell you the Panamera, but we don't want your old car. He says, you just sold me this car.
Nobody wants to buy it.
No,
though.
it's a 67% depreciation the moment you sign the
Oh,
bottom
because
line.
that's right. Because they go by the book value.
Yeah, they go by book value. So ALG makes the decisions of what the cars are worth at the end of the lease,
Mhm.
and so they say what the car is going to be worth. So the moment they sold it. They're
He-
like,
he'd
we don't
be-
want it back.
Yeah, he'd be
Do
better off
not.
selling it online, and actually, they're selling pretty good if they're brand new.
Well, he had a lot of challenges with that, but it's
Yeah.
not just them. It's Volkswagen, it's Audi, it's Porsche, it's all the brands that we just said under one roof.
Yep.
They're all having the same problem. And in Europe, they have a problem because they're not selling cars because one, they let all the Chinese cars in,
Yep.
and two, people don't want their electric cars because every country's got a different layout of where their cities are, where people live, what they do. And people don't want them. They can't get charging. They're not happy with it. It gets cold. And the Chinese are coming in. And so there's a lot of cars left on lots. And they've literally filled up every parking spot at the docks. So if you today wanted to buy an Audi, you could call a dealer. They could probably take it right off the lot and get it to you pretty darn quick.
I have a feeling you're pointing towards the strike, right?
Yes.
Okay. So there's a big strike going on at VW plants in Germany because they're watching the sales decline because of everything that you just said. And now they're looking at potential massive layoffs.
3 plants shutting down.
Not just shutting, but here's the thing. They want to shut down plants anyway. They want to fire workers. And so the workers are saying, no, you can't
They want
just
'em to
get
cut
rid of us.
pay.
They're in a union.
Yeah. They have a big
You can't
union
just fire us like out of nowhere.
Right.
So instead, they're shutting down production anyway. And what's funny is that's probably going to save Volkswagen some money
We'll see.
in the
We'll
meantime.
see.
So it could actually help with the. But
They're
look,
building cars
they're-
in Mexico and shipping them here to
Volkswagen
the
has
US,
still.
so.
Volkswagen has still put their foot down and said we are going electric.
Mhm.
Not just with
Well,
VW,
they
but
got
Audi
their
has said
hands
that
slapped pretty hard.
really hard.
Billions
so
of dollars.
they're terrified of the U.S. government because of what happened with Dieselgate back in 2016, and which it's so wild to think it's less than 10 years ago
There's
that
more
that
to
imploded.
story. So they want them to cut their pay by 10%. I say let the executives cut their pay by 10%.
Yeah.
That ain't going to happen. They're going to make the employees that are actually building the cars. Now, here in the U.S., we have a big plant in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and they went union. And that's another interesting story. I had Henry Payne on from the Detroit News, and he told the story on our channel.
Yeah.
You need to look for that. It's very interesting. There was a political move there. They told Volkswagen, in a nutshell, they told Volkswagen that if you don't let the unions come in and win this vote, we're going to take away your tax credit.
Yep.
So we're out. So they needed to sell cars.
Yeah, they're terrified of screwing up with the government again because
And they have a battery plant
how
here
many
and everything.
how many billions of dollars did they lose during Dieselgate?
Somebody went to prison. A couple people went to
A
prison.
lot of people went to prison.
So what's interesting today,
Yeah.
this is the interesting thing. Today, if you wanted to buy something really, really cool that gets 70 miles to the gallon, there is diesel hybrid.
Mm.
It's the same thing they use on
That'd be
trains.
cool. Like
They take that
48 volt
technology-
mild hybrid, or is it
It's-
engine generating an
It's
electric battery?
engine generating an electric battery like
Okay,
a
yeah.
Prius, but it's diesel.
Yeah.
70 miles to the gallon. They do exist. I did talk to a couple executives. They're very aware of it. Could it come to the U.S.? Maybe. So back in the 70s, diesels were all smoky. No one wanted them.
Yep.
Then in 2000, 30 years later, they come out and everyone's like, ooh, I've had two of them.
Well, clean diesel, that was
Clean
the selling
diesel.
point.
Right, and it was. And it got 55 miles to the gallon.
And really, it was just fancy marketing. It wasn't really
But
anything
now
different.
we're talking instead of 55, which is what you get in like a Golf R. I'm sorry, not a Golf R, Golf diesel.
Yeah, we had
The
an
TDI.
A3 TDI when that first
That was
came out.
so cool.
Got like over 50 miles to the gallon. I thought it was awesome.
It was.
And even our cars, which I think we get about like 30 miles to the gallon around the
30
town
I get
on
38
highway.
38 to 40
On the highway.
on the highway.
Yeah. Oh my God. Amazing. Love it.
I'm not
It's
getting
great.
rid of it.
Great for road trips. Absolutely.
700
love it.
miles in a tank all day long.
It's
So,
amazing.
Now, if you could do that with 70 miles to the gallon.
Also, smaller car, lighter car.
Yeah.
Add on a 48 volt mild hybrid, or add on a battery pack where the diesel is generating power for the battery pack.
That'd be smart.
Huge selling point
Oh
for
my God.
Americans. Like, oh yeah, I get the same
Fill up
performance.
once a month.
And I can, I mean, I still only fill up like once a month, but
I do too.
but bring that to the market, you'll sell it, and diesel's cleaner than regular fuel, and people
What
don't
comes
know
up the
that.
tailpipe- I know. Well, they got hydrogen coming at BMW. They made some smart moves. They got pressured on this situation 30 years ago, and they built a plant.
Yeah.
And they're now 30 years in South Carolina, the number one employee in South Carolina. And every single SUV, except for what goes to China, is made here in the U.S. Diesel, gas, hybrid, electric, and even hydrogen coming are all going to be made in the plant in Spartanburg, and it'll be shipped from there. So they already beat the potential tariff situation. Although a lot of brands are building in Mexico, so we'll see what happens in this case. I think it's more of a pressure tactic to get them to comply and not build in other countries. But when you look at every single brand, whether it be Jaguar, who's doubling down on electric with their weird advertising and their weird
And we
car,
do have to dig into that a little bit deeper because we talked about it in a video on our channel, and we kind of covered how silly it was, but I think we were a little tame in our description.
Well, I was being nice because we didn't know what the car looked like. Then when we saw the concept, no one's seen the production car yet.
But I think the biggest
But we know what's going to stay. It's going to look like a Crossfire and a Chrysler 300 had a baby.
it looks like a Rolls-Royce Spectre with
So that would be cool.
well, it does kind of look like one with like an air conditioning unit strapped on the front and back, because it's just
That's
straight
funny.
lines.
Yeah.
So
It's too blunt.
this is the
But
thing.
so was the commercial.
This is the death knell for Jaguar in my eyes.
It's bad.
Where they come and say, here's
We don't want our
here's an ad
customers.
for the new. Yeah, no, they've said that though.
Yeah.
Whoever's running the marketing keeps doubling down on all the things that are going to destroy the company, and they say, if you go and if you want to have a good laugh, go to their X account and just look at the replies. Where people will say like, hey, why are you doing this? Or they'll make a comment about how they feel about the car or the new advertising, which has no cars in it and apparently is, lots of androgynous looking people in bright colors with paints and hammers, and you're like, are you selling perfume? Like,
Are you
what's
selling paintings? Is this Andy Warhol?
yeah, it does.
What
feel,
drug did you take before you produced this?
it feels like a performative art show more than anything else.
Yes.
But
That's not their customers.
and then
because they don't have the money.
But their responses drive me wild. I've never seen a company come out. This is not like Southwest where it's funny.
Mm-hmm.
This is This is, it's not like Carl's Jr. and Wendy's where they're having a spat online
Right.
and it's funny. This is no, you don't understand, and also just wait a little bit longer and you might see what. And no, that you're trying to sell me on a car, and they've explicitly said we don't care.
Yeah.
About our current customers. We're closing half of our dealerships. We're increasing the
80%.
cost.
80% of the dealers globally will be shut down.
And we're increasing our cost from you could buy a Jaguar for
$100,000, a nice one.
But now they're estimating. We've heard
$250,000.
Yeah, we've heard $250,000. So
who's got $250,000 to buy an electric car?
I heard
it's a very small market.
I heard a great analysis. Mm-hmm. The kinds of people that are going to want to buy something that's trendy, something that's electric, something that bucks the trend, something that's colorful, something that's weird, something that's unique. They're the kind of people that are already buying that sorts of stuff and already living that sorts of lifestyle on the East and West coasts.
Right.
They're the people that are already loud and proud about, I'm so different and unique.
That's okay.
Right, and so they're targeting those people that are the same people.
That's not a lot of people.
The same people that will buy the Rivian when it first comes out, the same people that will buy the Cybertruck when it first comes out. There's going to be the rich Rodeo Drive moms that show up in the brand new Jaguar, and a month later it'll be gone.
Right. It's just like the Cybertruck. It's very interesting. Now, on the other side of the Jaguar or Tata line, which is an Indian car company, Ratan Tata has passed away. I'm hoping he's not spinning in his grave. He saved Land Rover. Now, today, you can look at the Defender, you can look at the Range Rover, and the line of the vehicles are better. They include maintenance. I was just in the Octa, which is the off-road vehicle. It's got this cool 6D transmission. So they found their customers. They knew their customers were true off-roaders on a global basis. They make limited production cars. There's only 300 of the Octas, and that's smart. Range Rover, still premium, top of the line. So they know that that's a seller, and selling the Discovery, they're not going to sell a lot of those.
Yep.
And so when they shifted everything to building things like the Evoque and building cool product, they did well. So they got one of the two brands online. I really worry about Jaguar. Well, you can tell car collector.
You can tell that the people that are in charge of Jaguar are just in charge of Jaguar, not JLR.
Right. JLR is the corporate name for all of it. And
which they've also rebranded the logo. It used to be
the
Jaguar Land Rover
either.
stacked on top of each other, but because they changed the Jaguar logo, and now it's just a J, L, and R that looks kind of stylistic, which is fine. It's fine.
I just don't like what they do with the new font on the Jaguar.
Look,
it's too 70s.
I think Tata has lost the plot.
At least on Jaguar.
Well, because look, Tata is one of the biggest car companies in the world. They have their own models that sell in Asia
for $2,500
for super cheap, and they're huge,
and they sell them in India.
Yeah, because they can do what is it, the trainer license where you can be 14 years old and buy a car.
They do that in Italy.
Buy a car for $2,000 or whatever, and that's fine.
It's basically a scooter,
and
so
they're
you
doing
can't go
fine.
so fast to hurt yourself.
But at some point, Jaguar lost the plot when they got the new CEO that came in, the new marketing manager that came in. They put their foot down and they said, "Hey, customer, screw you."
And you know what?
And they've just
same thing back.
They've just shy of actually said those words.
Yeah.
They don't care. They have said that.
And you can find that marketing person's presentation in his mesh shirt.
It's really weird. It's really odd to you're looking at him standing up there talking about a car company.
Look like you're a leader.
And
look like a professional.
But the one thing he doesn't talk about the entire time is anything about the car. He's just talking about these fanciful ideas of
Didn't this happen
marketing.
With Cadillac when they moved their corporate offices to New York City? And the person, her name was Melody, was all in charge of this. And people are going to buy new cars like they buy phones.
No,
a phone can be $1,000.
Yeah.
A car can be $100,000. There's a whole different mindset. And she's no longer there. You know where she is now? Mercedes. She showed up again.
But Lincoln tried the same thing.
Right.
They tried to have this, you can just switch out your car whenever you want.
Right.
Porsche has tried the same thing.
Volvo tried that too.
Volvo tried that and canceled it.
Yeah.
Lincoln tried it and canceled it. Porsche actually still has it going on.
Really?
You can pay for a subscription service right now.
I would never do that.
You can drop by your local dealership. They have cars reserved specifically for this program. You can just grab the car and drive.
You can't do it in some states. New York?
Yeah, it's restricted.
New York, Alaska,
certain
that's probably
things.
why I don't see it.
There's a huge liability related to that. There's probably some insurance waivers.
Cars. Yeah, there's a lot of weirdness.
Yeah, but it's through it's connected to your lease, but there's an additional fee.
Sounds like they're really sticking it to people.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk Porsche for a moment.
Okay. We did talked about the Taycan.
Right, we talked about the Taycan, and that's under the VW umbrella. But what I wanted to mention
is not going to sell.
was the darling of the Porsche lineup.
The 911.
The 911,
Yes.
which everybody thought was going to go hybrid, and they are making a hybrid version, but they've also
They're gonna
explicitly
hybridize it,
said
yeah.
they've explicitly said that they've gone back on one of their original statements, and they're going to offer an all-gas version, and they're still going to
Metal
offer
cell.
at least one model with a manual transmission.
They need that. And also Macan.
They're
they
keeping
backed
their
up on
brand
the Macan
identity.
also saying,
Yeah.
we're going to offer our 2-liter gas, or you can buy electric, because they know they have to make the mandate. But almost every brand has said, listen, we're going to make what customers want.
Yeah.
Do you want electric? Do you want hybrid? Do you want gas? We'll make what you want. General Motors said we are going to coexist.
Yeah.
You want gas? We'll make gas. You want electric? We'll have that. We don't have hybrid available.
Yep. But then you have
but
brands.
Ford is still trying. Ford's
Yeah.
still trying to do electric, but they are getting very aware that hybrids
Well,
are...
they have also made a public statement that they will always have a V8 engine with a manual option as long as it is legal,
Right.
which is an amazing statement to make from a company that has gone so heavily into battery technology, so aggressively
But
into
no one's making money.
autonomous technology, which is a dud at this point. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think anyone's even talking about that anymore.
Yep.
We've hit level 3
Mm-hmm.
and just stopped.
Well, I'm telling you, there's a lot of changes coming, and I've called this out for years, and I knew it was going to happen. And November 6th, things changed.
Yep.
Now you have President Trump coming in. Whether you like him or not is not the point. The point is he has said what he is going to do. I do know he's going to do 2 of the 3 things he needs to save the auto industry.
Yeah.
1, no more mandates. And like Paul said, you're not just going to say it's a mandate, but it's a mandate that was put in place by the Biden administration and by
Yeah.
Obama.
The rules are so strict it might as well be a mandate.
Right. That's well put. That will go away. Day 1, he said he will put his hand on the Bible January 20th, whenever you're listening to this, and that will go away. And that includes the $7,500 tax credit.
Yep.
And soon you will see a lot of brands go, whoa!
Except for Tesla, because he actually wants it.
No,
he wants to get
Elon
rid of.
Musk
He wants to
wants
get
it
rid of
to
the
go
credit.
away.
Yeah.
Why?
Because he wants people
Own
to
the market.
He wants. Well, he already owns the market. Let's be
Yeah,
honest.
you know, 66%.
But I don't think he needs that. And I
He
think
doesn't
that it
need
will allow the other companies to go away from the EV market because they realize it's not profitable, and he can still get by just fine because people are still buying his
He'll have
cars.
less competitors. What,
He's-
he's going to have Rivian
He's
and
making his
Lucid?
product on volume. He doesn't care.
He doesn't care. As a matter of fact, he's got Trump's ear, so we know that if he says, I don't care, he really truly means it.
Yeah.
And so that's interesting. So $7,500 tax credit goes away,
Mm-hmm.
mandate goes away. There's one thing that needs to happen.
Carb.
Right. So this is the one thing I'm trying. Somebody please get a hold of Sean Duffy and Lee Zeldin and say, this is number 1. Don't wait till the end of 2 years or 4 years. This needs to be done immediately. Remove the California Air Resources Board power. Because then, no matter what state you live in, no matter what country you live in, you'll have the freedom to make those choices. And giving one little agency serious wicked power is a big mistake. And it's going to kill the industry. You think, whatever. Half of the Dow Jones, half of it is impacted by the automotive industry. That's gargantuan. Think of the billions and billions and billions of dollars if we were to lose the auto industry. And that could happen if they leave that CARB in place, because they're going to make 17 states follow, and the rest of the states are like, we have no say, because one state's making the rules for the other 17.
And CARB's only getting more and more strict because now electric vehicles are mandated, and now I will actually use the word this time. Electric vehicles are mandated from 2030. They moved it.
Yep, 2030.
They
That
keep
was
moving it.
26. It could change because we know Newsom won't be in office in 2030.
Probably not.
But still, he doesn't have the even if he's not in office, it's who's running that California Air Resources Board. Again, follow the money.
Right.
Where's the money?
Yeah,
Somebody's
well,
getting
they're not elected, so
Right.
someone's sitting there doing their job, and they believe that this is going to help, but essentially
Biggest
it's
mistake
destroying
ever.
the economy. So, I mean,
Putting people in a position of power is
Yeah.
always a mistake. I don't care if you're talking about at your job, or you're talking about at the airport, or you're talking about in the auto industry.
Yep.
Putting someone in charge and giving them this power goes to their head, and
Yep.
it goes to a whole new level.
Yeah. So the solution is diversification here. It's going to give these companies the money to experiment with new technologies that will actually do better for the environment than
Including
just
e-gas.
deciding
Yeah.
what's going to happen. Even Formula One's going to e-gas.
I love e-gas. Huge fan. We've covered it on our channel. Porsche put billions of dollars in to invest in synthetic gasoline.
It's actually a lot of companies.
Oil.
Porsche was probably the biggest one.
Right, but
now it's actually a lot
we
of
got
companies are
Dutch
investing
Oil.
in this. Yeah.
And Aramco, who also is a sponsor of Formula One.
Which is why they're going to, I think, a 50-50 split hybrid to engine.
You won't even notice the difference.
But that's the thing is,
you put it in your '94 Camry and it won't notice.
And where were we where they were using e-gas and all the
at the Rennsport reunion?
Yeah, Rennsport reunion. They did not have regular gas available. This is a big Porsche reunion at Laguna Seca, famous racetrack in California.
Yep.
And they were using this synthetic gas. So here's the thing about the synthetic gas. It's not that they are making something that's like gas. They're actually making gasoline. They are making petroleum.
Heptane, yes.
Heptane, thank you. They're making this, and it's synthetically made instead of mining and then processing.
It's fossil fuels.
It's just a chemical.
Let me correct that. Crude oil. There's no such thing as fossil fuels. Crude oil. Taking crude
Well,
oil
and
processing it 5 times as diesel, 7 times as heptane, which is gasoline.
Yeah, but a quick note on the fossil fuel for anybody that it doesn't actually come from fossils. It's not like you're actually melting dinosaurs. Most of it's plant life that's deteriorated and turned into like a viscous fluid, which is kind of how we get this oil stuff. But so e-gas is a great option for the future,
in Chile,
which will save every. If let's say that the oil industry collapses because of this, it won't. We know it won't. But
they're involved in it too.
Of course, yeah, they're
involved in everything. They're even making charging stations.
They're invested in it. Let's say they change from oil rigs out and wherever to labs making this stuff. They're still going to be fine.
2 labs, 3 labs running. There's one in Germany where they're testing. One in Chile, which is up and running.
Yep.
And one in Houston, which is opening at the end, open, depending on when you listen to this, at the end of 2024.
And then because it's fully synthetic, that means that they don't need to have an octane booster like ethanol.
Right.
Which means you can put it directly into your 1965 Mustang and it'll run fine. And it won't get,
or your 94 Camry.
Probably most people have like an older car and they want to keep it alive.
Right.
And this will save those vehicles from becoming obsolete.
Right. And no changes, no filters changes, no emission changes, no computer change, nothing. You pump it the same as anything else. Right now, it's expensive. But it will get less
just like everything else.
Right. Just like when cell phones came out, they were stupid expensive and the cost
to be fair, they're still stupid expensive.
Right. But the service has gotten more and more reasonably priced where you have unlimited access and so forth.
Yeah.
So you're going to see that happening. Hydrogen is also in play. BMW
so hydrogen's got an interesting history, though.
Right. And BMW and Hyundai and
Toyota
have been really utilizing it, but they find the best use for it is Toyota is using it going from the Port of Long Beach to the warehouse because they're not allowed in California to have diesel-powered trucks. So they're loading them onto
There's
vehicles.
only a couple places you can really get the fuel anyway, so that's actually very convenient for them.
The methanol that comes off of garbage dumps.
Yeah,
garbage
and they
reprocess.
reprocess.
And they reprocess it, put it right in at the port. Yeah. They load up the vehicles, and all they're doing is back and forth, and that's really what it's a good use for.
Yeah.
But I mean, BMW is investing in the car side. I think the problem is the infrastructure, much like that.
Toyota did that with they had a GR Yaris or GR Corolla, and they tested at the Nürburgring with hydrogen power to prove that it works.
It works.
But unfortunately, it burns through the fuel really quickly because there's actually a differerell in the percentage of like how much power could be made and then how much actual energy you get.
Right. So they're using it to charge batteries instead.
Yeah.
So we found that they've done this before.
Way back when I was in like 5th grade, I remember doing a project on this, and they were doing hydrogen combustion engines, essentially taking the design from a regular internal combustion engine and modifying it for hydrogen. And it made sense at the time, and there was a lot of investment, and it was being supported by the Bush administration at the time.
I remember that.
And then Obama comes in and says, well, look, you're wasting all this time and money. You're not getting very far. Electric looks like a good opportunity. Pump a bunch, even more money.
Government money. Wait, your tax dollars.
Many magnitudes more into electric. And that's why, if you may have heard of hydrogen however long ago, and now it just disappeared and it's gone.
Right.
And now it's coming back, but it's coming back in a different way. They're not doing hydrogen combustion. Well, there's a couple. I think Toyota's testing with hydrogen combustion, but hydrogen fuel cell
makes the most sense.
That's what they've been doing as like a generator to charge it kind of goes through like a radiator, does a chemical reaction and creates electricity and charges the battery.
So I don't know if that's got as much legs as synthetic gas.
It is expensive. It's not nearly as efficient. Engineering Explained did a fantastic video breaking down the actual math behind it. And this is these a lot of things. I think e-fuel, e-gas is the thing we're going to see faster than anything else.
Right.
And all these other alternative energy prospects
And
are
better
going to
fuel
be
efficient
are going to be
vehicles.
down the line
Right.
as we see this evolution happening here.
And I expect gas prices to drop as we drill, baby, drill, as President Trump says. That will help all of us as gasoline gets more and more.
Well, once he releases the regulations on that, because
right, there's too many regulations on literally everything.
Well, we keep really close eye on this stuff, and you may be thinking like, well, why are you talking about like regulations and energy and stuff like that? This directly affects. Think about during the pandemic, and gas was so prohibitively expensive that even just buying like a toothbrush went up in value.
Right.
Because in order to ship all this stuff, you have to, the ships and the planes and the trains and the trucks and then the delivery vehicles. It got more expensive for everything along the entire process.
The supply chain,
including that petroleum is used for
everything
that we are touching now.
Everything you're wearing, everything you're touching.
Petroleum is
including
at least
medications, food.
Yeah, petroleum is at least even like a fraction of a percentage, but it is applied to everything.
I did a project for the glass industry, and they're telling me that there's plastic and glass. We use petroleum for that. So I was trying to come up with things that didn't have petroleum in them. There isn't anything.
Food, maybe.
No, some food does.
Some food does,
and or the container thereof. It was mind blowing. I tried everything to come up with something that didn't have petroleum in it, and
it's an integral part of the manufacturing process of
in medication,
the plastics and the metals, and
ridiculous.
even if it's used as a lubricant to help make something,
right?
It's still a part of it.
Go away.
Yeah, it's so integral that you kind of have to put that to one side and say, okay, maybe the oil industry won't be making fuel, but they'll be making plenty of money and
they'll be making money.
Process, and the companies are going to be fine. It's not like tomorrow we're not going to have fuel stations anymore.
No,
we're not talking about like.
That's not. I don't think it's going to happen in any of our lifetimes.
Yeah, in one way, we're not talking about like, yes, it's going to save the environment or it's going to destroy the environment.
There's things you can do.
It's also not the oil companies are going to collapse and you're not going to have access. It's that there's just pivots going on in the industry. It's not like.
But all of this
it's not like EVs though. It's not like EVs that are actually destroying the automotive industry. This is just.
But they're also destroying the environment because of the mining.
Yeah.
What we call in our business cradle to grave. From all of the raw materials to the end of life of the vehicle and all those components where they go, EVs are worse for the environment than gasoline-powered vehicles, which are mostly recyclable. And the seat materials, so I have a whole thing on leather that we did. I mean, we can go on and on and on and on. And I think the whole point of this podcast was to talk it out a little bit more than giving you our Friday news segments or our Tuesday or our Sunday news segments, because there is so much more for the average person to understand. And when you do get a grasp on the automotive industry and the impacts and what's going on today, every dealer, every manufacturer is worried about the mandate and the removal of that.
Even if they've completely bought in.
California waiver. They don't have a choice.
Yeah.
I've talked to brands, I've talked to manufacturers, I've talked to dealers, I've talked to consumers, and you start adding all this up, it all comes down to the California Air Resources Board, the California waiver. You do whatever you want in your state, but don't tell the other states they have to do this. And the problem is that is a problem. So either they have to dissolve that board or take away their power.
Right.
And then if they don't, we're going to have a massive economic failure.
And we also know that the government has the ability and has taken away power from states in that regard already. To just kind of like as a note for you guys to think about in the back of your head as we wrap up. There was a law that was passed in Massachusetts that said that you had to have the right to repair is now mandated. Right. You had to be able to repair your car.
That's very interesting.
That we've
covered that as well.
We don't have like a full wraparound story of exactly what's going on here, but NHTSA, the National Highway Traffic and Safety Association, went to all the major manufacturers, contacted all of and this is a public letter, you can look it up, and they said, Massachusetts made this right to repair law. They said that you have to have access to
your
OBD2 port. You have to be able to do, because there's a lot of cars, if you replace a fuel filter, you have to go into the system and check something.
No, even mine says that if I want to change oil in my SUV, I have to go to the dealer. So we actually bought the machine, but
I have a friend who's got a McLaren.
Yeah.
And he has a used McLaren. He absolutely loves it. We are very far away from the nearest McLaren dealership.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's like 6 hours away.
Yeah. So he says he needs a new battery. He
Oh, boy.
can't do that unless he brings it to a dealership, or you pay some huge fee to access a program on like a tablet that you've already bought the program for. You need to lease access to the program. So
That's not
so
that's not
right. So
good.
Massachusetts said that's not cool because that's coming to
Screwing
vehicles.
consumers.
That's already happening to like tractors and stuff like
right. It's
that
also
with John
on cell
Deere.
phones even, or
Yeah.
TVs and
Yeah,
refrigerators or whatever.
I mean, you could take this apart, but good luck. You void the warranty instantly
Right.
because everything's stuck together with glue.
right.
So essentially, they said you need to have access to that. NHTSA goes to all the manufacturers and say you can't do that. They say that they say to Massachusetts you can't do that, but they kind of didn't really inform Massachusetts of that. They actually said ignore the
bother.
rule. Ignore the rule. Totally ignore the rule.
Why would you ignore the rule?
Right. So what I'm getting at here is NHTSA went and said ignore Massachusetts' new law, but then they say, oh no, please pay attention to California's. See, there we
So,
go.
This is why you should be as fired up as we are.
Yeah.
And the only way around this is the new administration is supposed to bring people in. Hopefully, we can get to those people and let them know, from NHTSA to the Department of Transportation to the EPA. You have to look at what makes sense and what doesn't, and stop. And I think you need to follow the money. Always follow the money. There's somebody getting paid off for the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Is like, I don't know, just ignore that law.
Well, there's dollars moving around for CARB too, and we know,
Right.
like we said, it's China.
Right.
It's whatever partnerships are going on there that is allowing that to survive, because China's making the batteries and sending them to the manufacturers to put into their cars, and it's keeping that the China alive and moving with all of the mining and the shipping, and I don't know if are they involved in oil. I think they're involved in
Yeah.
oil.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of moving parts here that are essentially locking in the current situation, making it unchangeable, because there's money going into so many people's pockets. It is a circular
Not going
connection.
into our pockets. We're not getting paid by
No, of
Big
course
Oil
not.
or anyone.
I mean, if anything, we take the tax credit, but you're paying for that anyway.
But I
so
don't
it
get
doesn't
the
matter.
tax credits. Because I won't buy an electric car.
Yeah.
You can buy one if you want one. I think that choice is the key. Let people buy what they want. Let them drive what they want.
Mhm.
And whatever the insurance cost is, that's on you. And note that electric cars just cost more to insure. And this is what it is.
Yep.
But I think there's some great product coming down the road. We've seen it all. We'll be covering it on our Car Smarts channel,
Yep.
which is where you'll find all the car reviews. All of the news will be here at Car Coach Reports. We're also on YouTube as well as Rumble, Substack. We're on literally every form of social media. So we're happy to comment on your comments. I try to get to them as soon as I can. But
Yep.
it's really amazing, this industry and what's happening.
Yep. And so we want to thank you all for watching. If you've made it this far, please be sure to like and subscribe and send this to somebody who is curious about what's going on in the auto industry.
Yeah. And we're curious your feedback. Put
Yeah.
it down in the comments below. If you'd like to support our channel, you can buy me a cup of coffee. The link for that is down below, as well as all the descriptions of how to reach myself, Lauren Fix, at Lauren Fix on all social media.
You can reach me at Pulp Fix. I'm mostly on Instagram, and you can follow
Fix
interest.
3.
Paul Fix 3, thank you. Paul Fix 3 on Instagram. You can find some interesting car stuff that I find there. And we hope to see you next time. And like we had mentioned throughout the podcast, if you hear any of the topics that you're interested in, go to our channel, look up the topics that you're interested in,
They're there.
and we have more condensed, more to the point produced content specifically on each of those topics.
Yep.
So thanks for watching.
Thanks so much for watching. Have a good day.
Cheers. This episode sponsored by our caffeine addiction.
Oh, boy.
Celsius and Red Bull, please reach out. Monster too.
Monster. 5 hour for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you tell I have a caffeine issue? Yeah. And a good cup of coffee.
Fancy cup of coffee. An
I'm
artisan.
a coffee snob.
An artisan cup of coffee.
Okay. That works.
Where
With an espresso machine?
where you get the milk just right.
No milk. No, a real espresso does not have
Well,
milk.
macadamia, not milk. Do it latte style.
Cashew.
It's got a good flavor to it.
I'll have to try it.
Pistachio, not milk, too. Actually,
Okay.
kind of a fan of that.
That's Elmhurst makes all
Oh
that.
yeah. Well, they're local.
Oh, they're local. Okay. So,
So welcome. Actually, you should probably do the welcome.
okay.
I'll throw that at the end. That was funny.